Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Libel the Bible. I'm Scott.
And I'm Rusty.
And, so previously on...
Previously on Libel the Bible.
What did we cover last time? We covered...
we did Noah's Ark.
Noah's Ark. Pretty good story. Pretty good.
Yeah. A lot of weird stuff happened.
Yeah, so in summary, guy gets in a boat, puts a bunch of animals on it. Everything else is wiped out. He starts civilization all over again. Civilization gets too advanced really quickly, and so God smashes down the Tower of Babel and makes everybody speak a different language.
Yeah, well, you skipped over the part where God makes like the covenant with Noah, where he realizes maybe I shouldn't commit mass murder. And so God tells Noah that, to remind myself not to commit mass murder, I'm going to put a rainbow in the sky. So when you see a rainbow in the sky, don't worry. That's just me reminding myself not to kill every living thing on the planet again.
Right. So it's a learning experience. So God's probably a better God in this episode than he was maybe in the last episode.
Yes.
You would hope.
So it's like a little sticker, when a child does something right, like they get a sticker. So like the rainbow's like God's sticker. Congratulations, you didn't kill anyone this week or everyone this week.
Maybe we could put like a chart up, like how many stars he gets. Like we can maybe try to track his progress.
Or maybe like a kill list, like who God has killed so far.
Has God killed more people than Rambo has in that one movie?
God killed everyone.
But how much was everyone back then? We don't even know, right?
I mean, it seemed like a lot of people. He killed giants. He killed every living creature. He created everything.
He didn't kill Abel, though.
So we did Noah's Ark last time. And what are we doing today?
We are doing Genesis 12, which is the story of Abram.
So Genesis 12 through 9, to be specific.
12 through 19.
I'm sorry, 12 through 19, correct. Abram... do you want to get into it? Do you want to tell me about your week, Scott? I know you're dying to tell me about what a great week you've had.
Hey, well, no, it's not a great week, but at noontime today, it passed the halfway point in the month, which means I'm halfway through my dry January. All right,
I didn't know that you were not drinking.
Yeah.
Is there a reason?
Yeah, borderline alcoholism will cause you to wake up.
I mean, you're quite functional.
Yeah, basically functional. But it was just time to take a break. And with the COVID running rampant, it was a good chance, good opportunity to stay home and
dry out,
and stay away from the virus for a little while.
And did you find yourself more productive during this drying out period?
No, not really.
Yeah, I gotta say, not to be an enabler. But I think you should have a drink right now.
What? The shaking stops after
You're
a while.
Little funnier with a drink or two, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know who wasn't a drinker, Scott? Apparently this man named Abram.
Yeah, not to jump ahead, either was his nephew. So, yeah, Abram, again, he's a new character. We haven't heard from him before.
Yeah, and he starts in Genesis 12, and the section that he's introduced is called The Call of Abram. And Abram is living in modern-day Turkey. And
you know that because you researched it, right? There's no...
Yes. So in the Bible, Abram is in a place called Haran.
Should I have this resistance to research? Or maybe I should Google stuff when I come across it. Because while I was reading, I was wondering, in real life, where are all these places? Or should I use you for that?
What I've noticed in the first, few episodes is every time I go off what's in the book, you get very upset by that, as if I'm watching the end of a movie that we're both supposed to go to, and so I'm experiencing something you're not. But so, for example, Haran, it's interesting to know the historical context where Haran is.
That's fine. I don't think I got upset. I don't think I get upset when you Google terms and locations. I think when you read 3 chapters ahead in the Bible and start revealing spoilers, that's different.
But again, I mean, if I'm revealing any spoilers, I apologize. But
it's a journey we're taking.
It's like one of those. It's like if you haven't seen The Godfather by now, I'm sorry, but he's going to wake up with a horse's head in his bed.
We started this off both saying that neither one of us had read this thing.
But I have to read ahead a little bit.
A little bit, okay.
So this is what I do. I read ahead a little.
So what about
and I come to it with a certain amount of prior knowledge about certain stories in the Bible. I can't I can't pretend I don't know certain things.
Yeah, all right. So anyway, God says to Abram, new guy, go forth from your home and into the land that I'll show you. And he leads him to Canaan. He's going to make a great nation of you, he says. And you're going to be blessed. And people that bless you will be blessed as well. People who curse you will be cursed as well. So at 75 years old, him and his wife bounce out of Haran.
Off. The first thing that Abram does when...
I'm sorry, they take his nephew too.
And what's his nephew's name?
Lot.
Abram leaves with his wife, Sarai.
That's nice.
And they take, like, their household staff... Right?
Is that what we're calling them?
Lot and his staff.
And their possessions.
Right. What did the Bible call them?
Cool. Who?
The people that went with Abram and Sarai. I think it was slaves, right? Like,
I don't know if they were all slaves, but yeah, maybe they were.
It seems like a lot of them were slaves.
Yeah, that's weird.
So they go and they head south, Canaan. They go to Canaan.
Through Shechem, and they hang out by the Oak of Morah, and they end up in Canaan.
Yeah, make a left at that, the Oak of Morah, and so Canaan is what is today modern-day Israel. So you figure...
I'm sorry, did that say that in the Bible, or you just researched that? I'm sorry, we did that already. Go ahead.
Yeah, we did that skit. We covered it. So... Canaan is what's today modern-day Israel, and they arrive, and upon arriving, Abram builds an altar to God.
Yes.
Okay. So God told them to go here, right?
He did.
He specifically instructed him to go to Canaan.
Yes. And he said, to your offspring, I will give this land. So I guess this is... Okay. He's settling this place, basically.
So... After Abram does this, do you remember what happens once they arrive and he builds an altar to God?
A famine strikes?
There's a fucking famine.
Yeah, thanks, God. This is a great place to be.
So God sends him to this place.
Yeah.
He directly instructs him, and there's a famine. So as a result of the famine, they have to go to Egypt.
Egypt, which is a real place.
Yeah, a totally real place with totally real, like, civilization and rulers. And the Pharaoh, there's a real Pharaoh, and Abram is extremely nervous.
Yeah.
Why is he so nervous?
Because his wife's apparently beautiful. Sarai is beautiful, and he says, when we show up and they find out this beautiful woman's my wife, they're going to kill me and take you. Yeah, so you're talking about this civilization in Egypt? Yeah, it's on the up and up. Yeah.
So this is the thing that I've been noticing. Like, as I read Genesis 12 through 19, this is really the first time that we're seeing sort of a normal civilization, right? So, like, we had Adam and Eve. That's not a real civilization. Then we have Noah living, like, in a land of giants. God wipes everything out. He kills everything. And then, it doesn't really go into detail about what civilization is like until we get to the Tower of Babel. Or Babel, I'm sorry, the Tower of Babel. But it doesn't really go, like, it gives you a hint into the fact that we're becoming advanced, but it doesn't really tell you anything about the values of civilizations, right? Whereas, as I read Genesis 12 through 19, and the casual way with which certain things were spoken about, as if, like, this was a totally normal thing to do, made me really think about how fucked up society was back then. So, because Abram is so deathly afraid of being killed, right, so that the Pharaoh can take his wife, what does he do?
He says, pretend you're my sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they do. They go, they get to the guard, they get to the front door. They say, is that your wife? No, it's my sister. Here you go. and Pharaoh takes his wife.
Yeah, I mean, the Pharaoh's like, hey, she's not attached. They're not married. Everything's cool. Like, she's hot. Yeah. I'm the Pharaoh.
Yeah, can I rewind to, like, a previous episode? Because you just mentioned the giants again. I was just thinking while I was sitting here, maybe the giants weren't in my mind when we did the episode, I thought they were like cartoon giants, like, the Do Re Mi giants, but maybe they were just like above average height people Like basketball team maybe or something?
They could have been. I think so. There's a lot of different books that were written that weren't included in the Old Testament, right? So like,
How do you know about them?
Because I did my research again.
Are these books freely available to people? Or?
Yeah. So like one of them, a famous one, is called the Book of Enoch. And this book, I think, goes into detail about the Nephilim. Was that the name of the giants? The Nephilim?
Wasn't Will Smith in that movie?
The Book of Eli.
Okay. All right.
And so in that particular book, they give you like stories about these things. So like when we read it in the Bible and we're like, whoa, they just casually mention giants for like one sentence and then like that's it.
So I was right, there are spin-off
series. So there
series,
are
so.
like, yes, so there are like spin-off books, right, that just weren't included in the Bible. So you can definitely go and watch like, you know, some YouTube videos because I know you're not a big reader.
I think once we get, you know, in like 22 years when we're through the Bible, we'll hit the side stories. So now Pharaoh goes, okay, Abram, because this isn't your wife, it's your sister. Here's some donkeys and some goats and some sheep. He hooks them up, and I guess that's their version of like a dowry you pay to the family, like.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he treats Abram.
So wait. So if that was her husband, he would have just killed him, and not have to give him up anything.
Well, we don't even know that because Abram just assumed that the Pharaoh was going to kill him to take his woman. I don't know, like, why he had that assumption.
That could have just some biased shit that, like, you know, people were talking shit about the Egyptians.
He could have been, like, racist against, like, Egyptians. Who knows, right?
Yeah. So you think one of the guards said, yeah, because they never said, one of the guards said, well, good thing that's not your wife because we'd have to kill you, right? So that never happened. So maybe his fear was unfounded.
So he gets, like, all this cool stuff from the Pharaoh.
Good shit.
Yeah. And then what happens?
God gets pissed off. You mentioned the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Where I read it as Pharaoh.
Pharaoh.
So now I'm wondering, was he a Pharaoh, or was that his name and all leaders after him were called the Pharaoh? So is this a name or a title?
I don't know. I would guess it's a title. I would think Pharaoh means in ancient Egyptian, you know, ruler or leader or king or monarch, whatever.
Unless he's the first king.
The translation would be.
He was the first king.
I mean, it's very possible.
Like if his name was Rusty, like the Rusty would be like a title after that.
Sure, it's very possible.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe we can do a whole separate episode on the etymology of like every single name and character in the Bible.
Or you can just research it on your own and like try and drop these knowledge.
So everything else that I research is like a whole to-do, but this is what I should have known to research.
Yeah, so God says he's not happy with Pharaoh's behavior, and he curses the land or gives him a plague. Or
he gives him a plague. Like, I don't know what the plague is. Like, I don't know if he gives him the herpes or like coronavirus. Like, who knows?
It's COVID negative 3012.
So he gives the Pharaoh and like his quote unquote house the plague.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the Pharaoh immediately knows it's because of Sarai and Abram.
Well, maybe his everyday life has been so routine. This is the only deviation from his routine, so it had to be that.
Process of elimination.
Right.
He got together like with his cabinet, and they were like, where could this have come from? So right away, the Pharaoh kills both Sarai and Abram, right?
No.
Oh, no.
He kicks him out.
Oh, he kicks them out. But he definitely takes like all those things that he gave to Abram, right? He takes them back.
He took it all with him.
So wait a second. So Abram was so deathly afraid when they entered Egypt that this guy was going to kill him to steal his wife. Now that he has cause to actually kill him for lying to him and then bringing a plague upon his house, he just releases him.
Well, yeah, because, maybe Abram's fear was unfounded, or maybe it wasn't. But, yeah, maybe Pharaoh was tough, but then God got involved on Abram's side. So the Pharaoh knew, cut my losses, let this go. Obviously, this guy is rolling with the big man.
Sure. Okay.
It's like parking in Suge Knight's parking spot. You just don't do it.
Right. It's like a little guy stepping up to somebody in a bar and, like, his big friend is behind him.
Right, yeah.
All right. So, I mean, so they all leave. So, Abram, Sarai, all his new slaves, all his like domesticated animals, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a massive caravan. They're allowed to leave with all their possessions.
Yeah. So they go back to where they came from.
And that gets us to Genesis 13, which is Abram and Lot separate.
Yeah, because apparently with all the stuff they've got, all the people they've got, the land isn't big enough for the two of them. And there's like some conflicts between Abram's people and Lot's people.
Yeah, that's the thing. For some reason, like Lot's people aren't getting along with Abram's people.
Which is weird. I mean,
they have land in all directions.
Yeah.
So what? Like these cows are grazing over here.
Yeah, there's no indication as to what the nature of the conflict is. Somebody was talking shit about somebody,
Right.
and you know what? Some of the slaves they acquired were probably Egyptians. Now they didn't like these guys from the north coming in, and who the hell knows what it is? And they don't really go into detail about it.
That's what it is. Regional differences.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Right.
it's over nothing.
Right, like Italians and Irish working on like railroads, constantly like butting heads with one another.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't see any of that firsthand in this story, but
I'm sorry, I did some research into American history, but,
right. Right.
I know how much you hate that.
Abram says to Lot, our people aren't getting along. The land's big enough for both of us. You want to go left, I'll go right. You want to go right, I'll go left, which is pretty cool. He's diplomat. Him and his nephew were cool, unlike the last nephew we heard about that got enslaved. So, Lot decides to go east, and he claims the plains of Jordan. And he goes as far as a city called Sodom.
Sodom. The Bible describes Sodom at the point that Lot arrives as the people being wicked, great sinners against the Lord.
Okay, all right. But now God says it's either Abram or Lot, like all these lands will be yours. Like
so,
as much as the dust of the
I
earth,
highlighted this part because what God says right now, listen, I have empathy for God. I know I make fun of God a lot, but this is one of those situations where I've been there myself. You get a little high, you get a little whatever, and you have a thought. And it's a good thought. But sometimes in the process of that thought leaving your head and coming out through your mouth, something gets messed up, and the words get messed up.
You do that often, yes.
I do that a lot. Believe me, I have a lot of great thoughts.
Yeah.
So, God says something he thinks is completely profound, but is totally unintelligible.
Yeah, break that down, because
All right.
I think I skipped right over that because I was like, whatever.
So God says, raise your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and to your offspring forever. Then he says, I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your offspring also can be counted. So I'm assuming what he's saying is there's a lot of grains in the dust of the earth, and so as many grains as there are, that is how many people will come from you. I don't understand the dust analogy. Dust is grimy, and it's not like sand.
Not grimy. Dust is
like a better analogy would have been sand or stars, which he later does. Stars. He actually later says that, like look up in the sky, and because God is always like making promises, not keeping the promises, but always reminding people about
what promise hasn't he kept?
He promised not to commit mass murder,
and he has not.
Yes.
Since. All right. So he's basically going to have a lot of people, and he's saying this land belongs to you.
It's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, or maybe I'm looking to nitpick God. But the way, God says this is very weird. The fact that he chose to use dust to describe people, because dust is dry, it just blows all over the place. I don't know. I feel like a better substance could have been used, or a better way to tell Abraham that, you are going to produce all of these people who will...
And when I first read the dust thing, I thought he was going to, smite everybody and turn everybody to dust and burn them or something.
It's just clunky language. So, okay, so Lot now sets off. Lot is in Sodom. God promises Abram that one day you will be the father of a great nation of peoples, right? Like all over the place, as far as the eye can see.
Right, yes.
Okay. And that gets us to Genesis 14.
Yeah.
Which is Lot's captivity and rescue.
All right, so let me just say that this part just mentions a bunch of kings' names and a bunch of lands that they were king over, and there's some sort of battle royale.
So there's a major war, right? Where there's like a whole bunch of kings that side with one another, and they're fighting a whole bunch of other kings. And during this war, Lot gets taken prisoner.
Yeah, I think the kings of Sodom and the king of Gomorrah fled.
They're conquered, right? Their kingdoms are conquered.
Yeah.
And then whoever is still remaining in that kingdom,
they took all the shit.
Yeah, they get turned into slaves. The victors take them.
Hey, did you happen to look up the word bitumen? I think on whatever social media we end up using, whatever website, I think I want to have like a glossary with vocabulary words.
All right, maybe we can reserve that for the patrons.
Who are these patrons you speak of?
Oh, they'll be there. So Lot is captured, and Abram winds up finding out about it because...
Yeah, somebody escaped.
Someone
and
escapes.
This is the first time I see the word. The escapee goes to Abram the Hebrew. What exactly is a Hebrew? I mean, I hear the words all the time. Is that a language? Is that a type of person? Is that Jewish?
I'm sorry, but what's the issue?
No, I'm just curious. Like the escapee escapes, runs and tells Abram the Hebrew that Lot's been captured and all this shit's happened, and what are we going to do about this?
So you're wondering, like...
I'm just wondering what a Hebrew is. Like, why is Abram now the Hebrew?
Right, like, where's the word Hebrew coming from? Like, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just introduce, like, a term, like, we're supposed to...
And it's almost like a title.
Like, we're supposed to know. Right. Well, I mean, again, remember, like, it was written many years after the quote-unquote events of Abram's life, right? So from the point of view of like whoever was writing it, like for his audience, like those people would probably know what a Hebrew is.
Okay, fine. That's fine.
So he finds out, Abram the Hebrew, he finds out that Lot has been captured. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the original war? There were like 5 kings against 4 kings. I would think like that; those were substantial sized armies.
Again, I hope there's a spinoff on this because it sounds like there should have been like a whole novel, about this war.
Yeah, like city states going to battle against each other.
Lord of the Rings kind of.
All right,
Game of Thrones kind of stuff.
So Abram finds out what's happening. Yeah. What's he do?
He gets 318 people.
Okay, so a little more than 300 people.
Yeah.
And what do they do?
Apparently, Abram is now a military leader, and he's got these 318 former, slaves and household workers are now an army, I guess. So he's going to go back and go get everything. He's going to go.
Yeah. And he does. Yeah. Like, no fuss, no muss. It says he like splits up his army.
Yes. He splits them in 2, and he takes them out. Yeah.
And he recovers Lot, right?
He does.
He frees Sodom and Gomorrah.
See, I wasn't sure of that. That's what that was. Okay, so they liberated the cities.
It seems like they liberated
that,
right.
Okay, that makes a little more sense to me now. Though.
Right, because that leads into when Abram is blessed by this guy. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Melchizedek.
You know what? And shame on me, being an American, a white American with a simple 1-syllable name like Scott. I look at names like this sometimes, and I'm like, oh, his name's Melchizedek. And like, I don't even give him the respect or the time to read his name, and that's not right. I should really.
I mean, you should take a look at the name. It is, vowels are in the right places. It's just weird. Yeah. Like, I don't know how to pronounce it. Melchizedek. That's the thing. I don't know how to pronounce the CH or the Z. Maybe the Z's pronounced like
it's not even. I didn't even try. And listen, if I mispronounce it, that's fine. At least I tried. I didn't even try. Yeah. Shame on me.
So do we even figure out who this guy is?
No, he's some sort of priest. He's the king of Salem.
So he's a king of Salem, right?
Yeah, so he's
But what makes that confusing is because right before he's introduced, some nameless guy is introduced who's only like the king of Sodom. He doesn't get a name.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, so like...
this Melchizedek guy, and I said going forward, he's going to be referred to as Mazikalik until further notice. He's the priest of God Most High, so he's the king, and I guess like the holy leader. I mean, separation of church and state never occurred.
And he blesses Abram.
Yes.
However, the king of Sodom, right? Abram gives him a tithe. He gives him a tenth of what he has.
Right.
Or did he give him a tenth of what he conquered?
See, I felt like he was trying to give him a tenth of. I wrote a tenth of everything. So
I think it is of everything, because I think he gave back everything he conquered, because he said something like, I don't want to be in debt to you, or I don't want you walking around saying that you made me rich. So whatever he conquered, he gave back.
Sodom said, no, take the people, but leave me the goods or something?
Yes.
And then Abram's like, no, I don't want to take anything.
Right, I don't want to be like in your debt.
Right, but then why are you only giving him a tenth of everything? Where's the other 9/10 going?
Well, I think the tenth is what he had before. So in other words, if he left Egypt with X amount of like goats, he's going to give a tenth of those to the king of Sodom.
Okay, fine. It was confusing.
Yeah, that section was definitely confusing, because a lot happened in like 3 verses. I mean, it's the end scene of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where it's like they all show up to honor the hobbits. You know, like the whole kingdom turns out.
Is that great scene when they say you kneel but no?
Yeah, you bow to no one, you kneel to no one, right? So like this is Abram's like you kneel to no one moment, right? Okay. Like these kings are coming to him to thank him, so he gives them 10% of what he has, and I'm assuming
what doesn't. I don't know what this.
I'm assuming this is where tithing comes from, right? Like this is the first tithe.
Yeah.
You know, like 10% to the church.
Is that what a tithe is? Is it a donation to the church, or
and it was
tax almost?
It
to
was
the church?
very, very standard. You know, like going back to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. Like,
okay, so we've discovered the birth of tithes and dowries. Apparently,
that episode ends, and we go into Genesis 15. Even though everything seems to be going well for Abram, right? He escapes death in Egypt, and not only does he escape death, he leaves fully intact with his wife.
Yeah.
You know, he seems prosperous as a result of like what he was given by the Pharaoh, but he's upset by one thing right now.
Oh, he doesn't have a kid yet, right?
He doesn't have a proper heir, right? He doesn't have
he's
kids.
Like, one of my slaves is going to have to be my heir. Right. Yeah.
So God promises him again that he's going to have as many descendants, and this time he does use a proper metaphor. He says, as stars in the sky.
Yeah.
I mean, that's lovelier than, like, fucking dust. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like your metaphor. Descendants will be like this shit dust that's, like, strewn across this land.
I don't know about you being the metaphor, please, man. I don't know about, it's a better metaphor.
Nah. The authors could have used some editing there.
Okay, so now God's hungry again, apparently.
I think what happens is, when God tells him about his descendants, Abram doesn't seem to really fully believe him. So God is like, what does he tell him?
Bring a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a ram, a turtle dove, a pigeon. Yeah, well, 3-year-olds for some reason.
Yeah, again, he's very, very specific about... I'm starting to think there must be some significance to the numbers, right? So, like, you got to figure, like, in ancient history, numbers were probably important to people, in terms of, like, maybe mystical shit that was going on. So, like, the numbers had to mean something to the authors.
Is it actually possible that the specificity of the ingredients that he wants is... because it's like a witch's brew, like spells and stuff that...
Maybe like alchemy.
Alchemy, yeah. Whatever he needs to do, he needs these reagents to actually make it work.
I mean, now that you bring it up, it makes a lot of sense. Like, he's very specific about these ingredients, like very specific.
Yeah. So then Abram brings it to him, and he cuts them in half again, except for the turtle dove and the pigeon. He cuts all the others in half.
You know what it is? Maybe God is preparing for the 12 days of Christmas. on the third day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, three 3-year-old heifers.
A turtle dove is mentioned in that song, right?
I mean, there's a lot of different shit in here.
And I kept saying, no, it's a partridge in a pear tree, not a turtle dove. But they do mention turtle doves in that song.
So he doesn't cut the birds in half for some reason.
No.
All right.
Some predators are trying to get the carry-on, and he shoos them away.
Mm-hmm. Like he's guarding the meat, right? Because God doesn't show up. Like, God asked for this feast. God's not around. He's got it all laid out. It's ready to go.
So how long does this go on for? Like,
I mean, he falls asleep. So Abram falls into a
deep sleep. Yeah,
deep sleep.
And the last time we had a deep sleep, it was like ribs got removed. Like, I'm not. I just like cringed when I saw the deep sleep. I was like, oh, here we go.
Well, something's going to be removed. Something worse than a rib is going to be removed.
Well, not yet. We're not there yet, but yeah. So he sees God, right, in his sleep, in his dreams, or a vision. And God mentions to him that your offspring shall be aliens in a land not theirs, and be slaves for 400 years. Afterwards, they will be rich, and God will bring judgment on the nation that they were oppressed in. Interesting. So now Abram's got to wait 400 years to see his people thrive?
This is being written in the future relative to Abram's time, right? Obviously, the Old Testament was written about events that had occurred long before it was being written. And what he's describing is this is a description of the Egyptian enslavement of the Israelites, and then the eventual plagues that are going to occur to the Egyptians, the exodus of the Jews, and them establishing a homeland in what is now considered Israel. In today's Israel.
Where was Canaan? Canaan wasn't Israel?
Canaan is Israel.
But that already happened. He already said this is all going to be yours.
Yes.
Oh, but he did say will be. Like, not right now, but it will be.
Exactly.
And he did mention, they did twice, I think they mentioned, that the Canaanites
right.
were on the land. So
right.
there were people there. So I guess they would be aliens right
so
now.
So this is that part where we were talking a few episodes ago, and I had said, I believe what Genesis is doing is it's creating not only a set of like codes, but also a justification or legitimacy for the people of Israel. And so this is that first part that really like shows you God tells Abram, your people will be enslaved for X amount of years. You know what I mean? So this is being written with foresight of what's going to occur, what happened in Egypt. So it's like a historical revision to say God told Abram that this is exactly what's going to happen to our people. So people who were reading the Old Testament at the time that it was written, it allows them to legitimize where they are living in Israel and saying, God has given us this land. This is our land. Events unfolded just as God told Abram they would.
You know what? I wish you hadn't told me that yet. Because I cast doubt on my,
well, what's the doubt? Testament. It seems like your mind blown?
No, it's just a bit, because now the
expectations subverted.
I was reading this as if the events hadn't happened yet, not that somebody in the future was going to write about the events and then twist them into the narrative they needed to explain their lot in life.
Well, the thing is, the events didn't happen. This is a fiction that's written by someone to justify the state that is presently occurring at the time that it was written.
I hate this. Oh, it sucks.
Why?
Because they could have written anything to describe anything that was going on and to justify anything that was going on or explain to the
But they couldn't because they had to stick to their history. So their history was 400 years of slavery in Egypt and then the wandering through the desert and then eventually arriving in the land that they began to occupy. So it's like written with 20/20 hindsight. Of course, God told Abram exactly what was going to happen because the guy who wrote it knew exactly what was going to happen, and he fitted into the plot.
I was reading this as like a newspaper article, not as a historical talking head version.
I mean, right. But I'm looking at it very much through the lens of like history, and
I'm going to still go forward like we're taking this seriously. So he said God will bring judgment on the nation that offended them, and then he wrote something. I circled this word: iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. The Amorites.
Yeah,
I don't know what iniquity means.
Yeah, I ain't looked that word up either. Maybe
we'll come back to that. That'll be in the vocabulary list. So he was saying the descendants will get the land from the river of Egypt to the river Euphrates.
Yeah, so God makes this covenant, and he tells them again that, your people will rule everything. And that gets us to Genesis 16, the birth of Ishmael. Because Abram doesn't have any kids, as a dutiful wife, Sarai only has one choice. What does she tell him?
Go into my slave girl.
Yeah.
Go into her.
Hagar.
Yeah, she's horrible.
He has to, not that he doesn't have to, but I'm sure he's more than happy to, go into Hagar.
He went to the bar that night. He's like, yo, you don't even want to know what my wife proposed to me. What, the hot Egyptian one? Yeah. Whoa, nice.
I mean, she's exotic. This is one of the parts I was telling you about earlier where, as I'm reading it, it gives me an insight into how people thought about morals and values during this time period. So when this was written, it was probably a very standard thing, right? For, like, husbands to sleep with their slaves.
Yeah, but I don't know. I find it doubtful that most of that was with the wife's consent or blessing, like this was. They're going to do what they want because they're the men, they're the rules and roost and whatever. They're going to do what they want, and the women just have to eat it.
Historically speaking, hunter-gatherers, and even up to the point where humans first settled, men typically had more than one wife. So she tells him, go sleep with Hagar, because I can't have kids.
Right, which is big of her.
He went into Hagar, and she conceived.
Yeah.
And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress being Sarai. So she's pregnant, and she is very resentful of the fact that she's pregnant. I don't know what she thought was going to happen.
See, when I looked at Sarai with contempt, I don't know if I almost felt like she wasn't resentful of the pregnancy. She felt like she was better than Sarai. That's the impression I got. Like she looked down on her, like, ugh, I did what you couldn't do.
Oh, I see.
There's nothing in this that tells me you're right or I'm right or somebody else is right.
Well,
that's just the feeling I got at first.
I think the next line. Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I don't know. For some reason, I had the impression that she was upset that she's pregnant, but now that you've mentioned that, you might be absolutely right. So Sarai says to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my slave girl to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. And then Abram says to Sarai, your slave girl is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she ran away from her. So you might be absolutely right. It's very possible that Hagar is now resentful of Sarai because she's saying, I can give Abram what you cannot, which is an heir. Maybe I deserve to be his wife and not you.
I think it's a power move.
Right. And so Sarai recognizes this. I mean, she's the OG wife. She's been around for 80, 90 years at this point. Who knows how long. And she deals with her harshly. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming there was maybe some physical punishment involved, right? And so Hagar runs away. Yeah.
Then the story gets weird.
Okay.
All right. So now
I like weird.
Yeah, she's hanging out by some river or stream, and a new type of character shows up. An angel of the Lord comes down and says to Hagar, "Where do you come from? Where do you go?" God, hi, Joe.
And he tells her to name her son Ishmael.
Ishmael, yes,
Right.
yes. Now at this point,
And by the way, he tells him that this kid's going to be a total asshole, basically.
yeah, but he does say, "Return and submit to Sarai." Like, know your place.
Okay, yes,
Tells her to
that's
go
right.
back.
I'm sorry. Yes, he says, go back. You're
And
going
I'll
to give
multiply
birth.
your offspring.
Right.
Now, does that mean her offspring is going to have multiple offspring, or she's going to have more offspring?
I think that sort of like Abram, that, she will start a line of her own as well.
Yeah, so go back, submit, and your son Ishmael, he says, he's going to be a wild ass of a man.
Yeah, a wild ass of a man. I mean, literally, he's going to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Not literally, but,
Yeah, he's going to be at odds with all his kin.
Yeah.
He's an ass. Like
Everyone's going to want to fight him. He's going to want to fight everyone.
Do you feel like a personal connection to this character?
I feel a little bit of a kinship. I mean, a little bit. I'm starting to think maybe he's not the asshole. Maybe everyone else is the asshole. That's what I think.
All right. So now, strangely enough, now, did I read this right? Hagar names the angel El Roy, El Ra.
Yeah,
What was
so
that?
I tried to figure that out a little bit, but you know what? Ultimately, I didn't really give a fuck.
Yeah, but I did, because they mentioned like the spot where it happened.
Yeah.
They named it like a thing after the angel, like it was a
Yeah.
fountain after the. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Abraham is now. Abram.
Abram.
Sorry, is 68, and he named his son Ishmael.
I'm sorry. He's 86.
Did I transpose these numbers?
Yeah, he's 86.
Oh, crap. Where's my pen?
So when Abram is 86, Ishmael's born. And this is where things... See, you said, like, the part with the angel and Hagar is crazy. To me, this next part is the crazy part. Okay?
I'm sorry, what forms do angels take? Did she see him as a man? Because the angels pop up again.
Okay. They're going to pop up again, like, in the next section. So I don't know, like, and how do they know that they're angels? Because the angels aren't introducing themselves as messengers of God.
Do they come down like from the sky? Like,
You think like you just know, like if an
feel it?
angel appears, yeah, like you feel
You'll know it
that
when you
it's
see it.
like, yeah.
All right.
So that's a continuity that we've wrapped up. So you feel the angel. So Genesis 17 starts next or
Sign of the
begins.
covenant.
It's the sign of the covenant. God is always making covenants.
Yeah, what's the definition of covenant?
A covenant's like an
Like
agreement.
a bond, like a pact,
An agreement.
Yeah, okay.
A contract.
All right. Abram is 99.
99.
99.
So his son Ishmael is 13.
And God decides he's going to do some name changing for some reason.
Yeah.
And he says, you are now going to be known as Abraham.
Yeah, I wonder where he came up with that name.
Abram.
You're no longer Abram. You're now Abraham. It's like, wow, how original, God.
Does it have anything to do with the
There's a
ham?
significance. I think Abraham, in like old whatever language they were using, might mean something like the beginning of a line or like the beginning of a house of people, like something like that. You know what I mean? So he changes his name to Abraham. It's very convenient that his name was Abram to begin with, which is very close to the meaning of the birth of a lineage or the beginning of a lineage.
Wait a minute. Don't you think that definition was probably applied to the name after this happened?
Yes, I think all of this was applied after this happened.
No, I'm saying, but you're saying God conveniently named him Abram, which the definition of Abram is the beginning of a line,
I'm
but that
saying-
definition didn't come till later.
Well-
we applied that definition after the fact.
Right. I'm saying that I don't think Abram really existed, and I don't think Abraham really existed.
Keep it moving.
And I'm not too sure that God really exists.
Keep it moving.
So, Abram is 99, and he's now Abraham. All right, cool, right?
And God says, I will give you and your offspring the land you're on that you are now an alien in.
But,
But,
what's the but, Scott?
man, this is crazy. Every male amongst you shall be circumcised as a sign of the covenant.
So in today's world, it's very standard, circumcision. I don't understand why God would want Abram to circumcise himself. You think this is another one of those things where it's like don't eat pork, comes out of a historical like necessity for not eating like meat that was sitting around, not refrigerated, getting people sick? And so the fact that people, maybe didn't have running water and plumbing, and so, smegma builds up in your foreskin, maybe giving you diseases. So that's got to be the origin of this, right?
Well, I'm told in modern day why people are still getting circumcised, and I'm told it was because of health reasons, because of, exactly what you said. People weren't clean, but people are mostly clean now, but they're still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, just soap up your fucking dick, man. You know
gotta
what
pull
I mean?
that shit back, and it's work involved. I understand, like, you'd go a month without showering. Or months, or who knows how long you go without showering. So,
all right, so God...
It's a place for shit to accumulate.
So God tells him, before anesthesia, everyone's got to be circumcised moving forward.
Now, had anyone been circumcised before that?
Yeah, in other words, like, how would
did
Abraham know,
what
what circumcision? Right.
Did the word circumference? That's
I would...
circumference of a circle. I mean, that's where it comes from, like...
Right.
That word didn't even exist before.
So I would think that maybe, if anything, it may have been used as a form of punishment maybe in some societies, but I don't know why anybody would willingly circumcise themselves prior to God's covenant.
Yeah.
Oh, right? Like, why would you circumcise yourself?
Can I get back to go into my slave girl, and he came into her?
Okay. You're talking about Abraham and Hagar?
And even before, when they mentioned come into them, I was like, oh, that's where that word came from.
I'm coming?
Yeah. Weird, right?
Basically, in the Bible, it's the origins of many of our sex phrases.
All right. So, he wants to, all the dudes in his employ.
All the young dudes.
Everyone's got to be cut. And going forward, all futures at 8 days old got to get cut. Which, that's probably more humane because, they're not going to remember it. And okay, how did they know how to perform this? Like, I'm just curious. Like, I can't think medical techniques were all that impressive back then.
You got to figure, so...
Like, was it with a sharp rock?
So when Abram invaded, remember when he went to get Lot, he had like 300 men with him. So he's got at least like 300-something men. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure, like... There were like 15 or 20 of those first operations that may have been botched. It was like a trial and error process. It's got to be, right? You know what I mean? Like when they started like transplanting like pig hearts into people, like people died, it didn't work until like they figured out like how to do it.
Didn't they just do the first one like this week?
Like the first successful one.
Oh, there was all bamboo boon hearts before that. Yeah, so do you think when they started, they said, okay, first the people that already have children step up? Let's try it out on you first because you already got yourself some kids?
Probably not. These people all sound like crazy maniacs. They probably were not that thought out. They were probably like just rounded up like whoever they saw first, and they were like, yo, let's go. We're going to get you circumcised.
Yeah, and then he also says if the people are not circumcised, you're not of the people. You're you're a separate type of people.
It's kind of like the Excelsior pass, right? Like in order to enter, like you got to show your circumcision. Yeah. It's crazy to me because...
What happened to the foreskins?
What happened to the foreskins? Oh, this is not a part that I read, so I don't want to trigger you.
Yeah, don't trigger me.
But prior to us starting whatever this is, this podcast, this show, whatever you want, the whole thing. Yeah. I know a story that happens later on where foreskins will be involved.
Oh, great. More knowledge.
Yeah. So when you ask me what happens to the foreskins, I don't know what happens to these foreskins, but if you're interested, I know what happens to a lot of foreskins later on.
And that's a Bible story you're telling me?
It's going to be in the Bible.
All right. So let's pretend you don't know that. So,
okay.
So is it possible these foreskins were also reagents to some spell? Like Eye of Newt, a lock of hair, 318 foreskins, like it's part of a spell, like a brew they're making.
But then that dispels God's magic hands. So does he need magic hands, or does he need
maybe the
these
reagents?
Things?
You cast a spell which makes your hand shimmer and that you do things with your hands.
Personally, again, I think this goes back to God being a little bit sadistic God's promised not to mass murder people, right? But he never promised not to have people like chop off their own foreskins.
Yeah, with
I never,
rocks.
I never promised that I wouldn't force you to like cut off your own, organs.
Yeah.
All right, so all men who want to be in the grace of God, in exchange for a prosperous future for the people, have to be circumcised. Then he goes to Sarai, and
she's 90 now.
She's 90, and he changes her name to Sarah. And what does he tell her?
By the way, I just think, Sarai and Sarah, it's just like the I becomes an H. I think there was just a story explaining how, just the chain, it got smudged or something, so they didn't know. So,
it's God chose the least creative names.
Yeah. So she's going to have a son. You're going to bear a son, and you're going to name him Isaac. Yeah, and there'll be no covenant for Ishmael. But he'll father 12 princes, but I got Isaac's back.
It's another situation, right? Like Cain and Abel, where for some reason one is in God's grace and one is not. I mean, I guess I get like why Ishmael wouldn't be in God's grace, because he didn't come from Sarah. He came from the Hagar lady. But God's angel told Hagar to like go and bear this child.
Well, that was just damage control and some anti-abortion rhetoric
that's
at that point.
True. That was
that's
damage control. Yeah. Even pro-life back then.
Well, of course. Yeah. Apparently, Abraham was very down with the circumcision.
Oh,
that shit happened immediately that day.
Circumcised.
No, I got it.
Everyone.
Go cut some dicks. I'm on it now.
He rounded up everyone and circumcised them. Yes, there was no hesitation. This gets us to Genesis 18. You had found God's conversations with himself extremely funny. Like when God's walking through the garden, talking about like we and us, right? I found the conversation that God had in this very weird, but we're going to get to that. Okay. So Genesis 18, a son promised to Abraham and Sarah. And we get the appearance of 3 dudes.
With God. Like God shows up with 3 dudes.
Yeah, I didn't understand this because was God like a silent player in this? Because God didn't say all that much.
And I'm not sure if he was there immediately. It was almost like God showed up and then...
Is it another thing where God isn't manifest like in the physical form? They show up and just like, again, that feeling?
I think God shows up with these 3 dudes and it was like, these are friends of ours.
Friends of ours.
Yeah.
Okay. When Abraham sees these 3 guys, he has a reaction.
That is Sarah. Make some food.
It's crazy. Like he like is manic. Yeah. He runs out to them. He's like, "Come on in." He makes his wife like start baking. He's ordering everyone around to like cook this, do this, do that. Let me wash your feet. Like this whole hullabaloo.
Yo, he goes to get goats and makes his servants kill him.
So this is because he knows they're angels. Is that what it is?
As much as Hagar knew that was an angel, I guess he knew these 3 were no joke.
Yeah. They ask him where's his wife. I don't know why. Like, do they have to give her like a medical exam, or do they have to check up on her ovaries, her uterus, see if everything's still functioning?
And once again, why is God asking questions if he's all-knowing? But you know what? There's no reason to assume God is all-knowing.
God's not asking the question. The angels are asking the questions. Maybe the angels are on a need-to-know basis.
I didn't really realize who was asking the question.
So far, they're kind of like God's dogs.
Yeah, okay. We're going to see that then.
Because it says, so in Genesis 18, verse 9, it says, they said to him, where is your wife Sarah?
Oh, okay.
And he said, there in the tent. Then one said, I will surely return to you in due season, and your wife Sarah shall have a son. This is sounding very creepy to me. It's almost like 3 random bros showed up, and they're like, where's your wife? And then one of them was like, I'm going to return and like knock her up.
Yeah. Or I'm doing it tonight, and in one season, which is 9 months, you're going to have a kid.
I mean, it's very creepy.
Do you think that these 3 dudes are like scam artists? Like they heard, there's a gullible guy named Abraham with a hot wife. Let's go talk some shit. And
So let me think.
Let's not
Is there an all-powerful, all-knowing God that sent 3 angels to this random person, or is it possible that it's just 3 con artists looking to scam him and bang his hot wife? Occam's razor would tell me that, it's just 3 guys.
Yeah, simplest answer is usually the right answer, right? I think we have to get away from calling God all-knowing and almighty. And no offense to people that...
He hasn't demonstrated
right, exactly.
Yet.
And
Right.
no one said it yet either. That's
right.
okay,
fair.
10,000 years removed from this,
I'm
now we call
speaking
them
from
that,
the
so
bias of
Right.
whatever
Let's not
has
do
been implemented in
Let's
or
not do that, because
implanted
we
in my
obviously
head,
seen
right?
at this point he's still making mistakes. So
Right. So God is not yet all-knowing and all-powerful. The problem is with Sarah getting pregnant.
She left. Well, she left.
Yeah, she's old as dirt, so
was
she
like-
finds this all ridiculous.
Let me just read. Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? And she laughed. And then they're like, "Why are you laughing?" And Sarah's like, "I didn't laugh." And God was like, "Yes, you did." No, I didn't. Yes, you did.
So it's not even like that. It wasn't even a back and forth. So here's the part that I found super weird. In Genesis 18, verse 13, the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? At the set time I will return to you in due season, and Sarah shall have a son.' But Sarah denied, saying, 'I did not laugh,' for she was afraid. He said,
Did he?
"Oh, yes."
Did it say for she was afraid?
But I'm reading you directly like what it says. And then it ends with, he said, "Oh, yes, you did laugh." And then that's the end of the section. And then we move on to like an entirely different story.
I thought something was going to happen. Like there was going to be some repercussions for that.
Yeah, like there was no like God had to have the last word. It was just like there was like she denied it, and he's like, "Oh, yes, you did laugh."
Yeah.
But like, there's no true
Like that would have been a good end of episode, like a mid-season episode, like not at the end of the season finale.
right. Like,
but
what is the conversation going to be when they pick up? Right. No, none of that happened. We go right to the next section of Genesis 18, which is the judgment pronounced on Sodom.
Okay, so my limited knowledge, I've always heard of Sodom and Gomorrah.
So we got to call back because Lot's living in Sodom. Yeah, Lot left, and he's living in Sodom. We remember the kingdom. Abraham helped save it, right? It's even though it's in this episode, it seems like so much crazy shit has happened since Lot has left for Sodom.
Yeah, what's going on here?
So we need to call back Sodom. All right. So the judgment pronounced on Sodom. And what were you saying?
I was saying, my limited knowledge, I've always heard of Sodom and Gomorrah, the destroyed cities, the sinful cities, the fire and the brimstone, and I'm like, this is going to be a kick-ass story.
Yeah.
And then this is what we get.
You didn't think it was kick-ass?
I think it lacked a lot of detail. I would have liked to see, like, this should have been a good 2-hour, like, survival movie,
So, for sure, I definitely think a lot of the Bible leaves out a lot of detail, but I think this is where you have to use your like mind and almost imagine being in that place and what was going on. So, first of all, God debates whether or not he wants to tell Abraham about what he's planning to do with Sodom.
So now he's talking to the angels?
No, he's like talking to himself, I
See,
think.
now I'm wondering, like, is it possible all
That
the
he's
time
talking
that he's
to
been
the
talking to
angels?
angels all along?
I mean, it makes sense.
I'd rather he did, because otherwise he sounds crazy.
So that's the other thing. So, like, remember I told you about the book of Enoch, and there's, like, other books that weren't included?
Non-canon.
So it's very possible that that was all flushed out, like, did God create angels in the very beginning, or did he create them, like, a little bit later on? Like, at what point after creation were angels created? Did angels exist before creation along with God? So it's very possible that one of those books, like, goes into, like, angels.
Okay.
Yeah. So for us, I don't know. It could be either way. He could be talking to angels, or he could just be referring to himself as us. Because I don't think he would say to angels they want to be as powerful as us, because then that would almost imply that angels are as powerful as he is.
Okay.
So I'm still sticking with the royal us.
Fine.
All right. So God tells Abraham, he decides he's going to tell him.
Right, but he also says something to I keep hearing this stuff about what's going on in Sodom, and I'm going to go check it out. And if they're like
right, like he's getting like reports, like
so again. All right. He's not almighty, not all knowing yet. Okay, so that might be learned skills in the future. So, okay, so he's getting messengers saying that Sodom's fucked up. Yeah, the men set out for Sodom, and then God. Abraham, and to his credit, goes, whoa, you're going to wipe out an entire city because of some bad eggs?
Yeah.
What if you find 50 people that are righteous?
Yeah, this whole bargain begins with, like, God. And, like, he keeps, Abraham's is the weirdest bargain, like,
you want to do it? Let's reenact it.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so wait a minute. What if you find 50 righteous people in the city?
Right, so God's like, well, if I find 50, then I won't do anything.
Right, spare them all.
Yeah.
Okay, 45. What if, like, 5, you don't find those 5, you only find 45?
All right, sure, 45. I won't do anything.
Now he's elbowing Sarah at this point. How about 40? 40?
God's like, 40, yeah.
Oh, do you think he's doing this not out of altruism, but he wants to save his nephew because he knows his nephew's there?
Well, that's a good point. There's probably some element of that, but I'm also thinking if God is going to invest himself into this man, into Abraham, and make Abraham the ancestor of his people, then Abraham probably has to already have certain qualities. Even though I haven't seen them yet, what I've seen from Abraham is he's like willing to sacrifice his wife, not fight for his wife, to protect himself, when he gave her up to the Pharaoh. He's like, he owns slaves, and you could tell me it's normalized, people own slaves. I mean, he makes his slaves fight in a war. They're not just working, like he's got them fighting to save Lot, who he has no relationship with anyway, like Lot's like off somewhere.
All right, so what if you find 40?
Yeah, I mean, so we're
30? 30.
So we
20,
go all the way down
10,
to how many?
10.
To 10. Okay.
And God says, oh no, this is your line. Go ahead. 10.
No, what is the line?
He says, if I find 10 righteous people, I ain't gonna fuck with nobody.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything if I can find 10. I don't know why he didn't just take it down to 1. Like what if you find 1 righteous person?
Well, no, you know what? You shouldn't have been hanging. If you're one person amongst a bunch of depraved lunatics, get out of there.
So,
Guilt by association at some point.
So God agrees, and he assuages Abraham's fear. If there's 10 righteous people, I won't do anything. So Genesis 19 begins, and it's called the depravity of Sodom. And in the depravity of Sodom, it starts off a little bit like the way that Sarah's pregnancy story started off. Like these strangers show up, right?
Yeah, 2 angels showed up at Sodom.
Yeah. And Lot...
What happened to the third one?
I don't know. Maybe the third one's who's giving God like all the information because God doesn't know.
I'm pretty sure the 3 men set out for. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought all 3.
Did he go? Maybe he went to Gomorrah, or she, or it.
Oh yeah, or maybe
they.
Maybe he's running a distraction. He's running interference or something.
So, Lot's like, you cannot sleep in the town square, man.
Yeah, they're like, we'll sleep in the town square.
Shit is crazy.
I didn't even think about that. This is
He's
the wrong
like,
side of
man,
town,
you want to be in my house.
Yeah, all right.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
And even then, like, all right, so they go in. This is a weird town. So, okay. So, Lot convinces these angels, I guess. They're angels?
Yeah. They specifically said to
so he convinces these angels
in man form.
Do not sleep in the town square. Come inside my house.
Yeah.
And what happens?
A fucking lynch mob shows up.
A mob shows up.
Surrounds the house like pitchforks.
What are they looking to rob these people?
No, not really. Like, bring them out here. We want to get to know them.
No, they want to rape them.
No, the men.
We want to get to know them.
I did not take it like that.
That's absolutely what it is. The name of the town is Sodom.
But I don't know.
Sodomy.
But that word hasn't been invented yet.
So, they're looking to rape them.
Right,
I can't ignore what I know.
Shit. Wait. We got to pause for a second. Okay, no.
So
in
the
my head,
mob,
this-
the
the story
mob
changed.
shows up, and they're like, and even if you didn't know like what Sodom meant, or you're
Right.
the next what Lot offers should give you like a context clue. He's like, yo, don't rape these guys. What do I have?
2 virgin daughters.
I've got 2 virgin daughters. I'll give them to you instead.
Have your way with them.
Yeah. So this is a crazy family.
It's a crazy town. Why would you live here?
The whole thing is insanity, right? So this mob wants to rape these strangers, and Lot is like, rape my daughters instead. And so
The angels yank them back in the house. Like, get in here, fool.
so the angels, right? They yank him back in. They padlock the door, and then what do?
Now, they tell Lot, you got to get the fuck out of here.
Well, before they tell Lot, what do they do to the mob?
I don't recall.
Did you miss that part?
Did I miss
They
that
blind them.
part? Oh, right. Okay. I thought
So they blind the mob.
Okay, yeah. All right,
Okay,
wow.
and that leads us to the next section of Genesis 19, which is Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed.
Yes. Now they tell Lot, you got to get the hell out of here. You gotta take your family, get out of here. And he kind of protests.
Well, he doesn't protest at first. Like, what he does is he runs around, right, and he tells like people that he's
They kind of laugh at
family
him.
with, like, yo, we got to get out, we got to get
They
out.
think he's dicking around.
They laugh at him. And like he loses all motivation. Like, even though these like angels, they just blinded everyone in the town, told them, we're going to destroy this place. You got to go.
Well, wait. Well, Sodom, do you think like everybody was high and drunk and having a good time, didn't give a shit? They were like laughing. I'm like, yo, chill out, dude. What's your problem?
So there's a very interesting theory about the Salem witch trials. And the theory goes that there was a particularly harsh winter, and a large portion of their crops was some kind of like wheat, barley, like, I don't know, because I'm not a farmer, so I don't know the names of all the different kinds. But there was some kind of wheat or barley that they were growing, and as a result of this harsh winter and frost, a certain kind of fungus wound up growing on it. And so when they harvested it, and they made it into beer, they made it into bread, because remember, people didn't drink water, right? Like, people were drinking beer all the time because water was not clean. It wasn't as potent as beer is today. It wasn't like high in alcohol content, but still, they were drinking like beer all day, which explains like a lot, right? Like a lot of wars, but people were constantly like basically drunk because that's what they had to drink. So when they harvested this wheat with the fungus on it, this particular fungus started making people trip the fuck out. And that's where like the origin of like the witches from Salem came from.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's like research that argues for this particular theory. You know, it was like a bad crop with fungus like on. So there's something's got to be happening in Sodom. If an entire town is looking to rape like 2 guys that just showed up, like, even in prison, you know,
The whole prison doesn't go.
right. The whole prison doesn't show up. Like, maybe like 8 guys will show up to the shower. You know what I mean? But not like the whole prison. So there's got to be something going on.
Yeah, this place is fucked up.
So the angels, they tell Lot, you know, you got to get out. He looks around. Nobody believes him. So he loses all motivation. So eventually, they force him out. Like, they basically take
scoop him up.
Yeah, they scoop him and his family up.
Teleport him outside the city. Like a big hand kind of thing?
You got to go. I think it's more like a bouncer throwing someone out.
See, I got the impression that they were literally scooped up like by magic and like put outside the city.
The big hands.
Yeah,
They were scooped up by God's big hands.
Something, yeah. Well, they're
so?
they're medium-sized angel hands.
All right. So,
And then
however
Lot
it
still
happened,
argues. They're like, go over there.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here. He goes, well, that city over there, I kind of know it. It's pretty cool. Can I just go over to that city?
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, fine. Go to that city.
Right.
But don't look back.
Right. Well, because they told him go somewhere, and he was like, well, I'm afraid that if I show up there, like, they're going to kill me. I don't know why.
I was going to be consumed. I thought it was the place they wanted him to go to wasn't going to be far enough away from whatever who cares?
So he finds a city that he wants to go to, and they're like, all right, cool. Go, we'll give you a head start because we don't want you to get fucked up, right? Yeah. So they set off for this town, and God rains fire and sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. Which we didn't get to. We didn't get to Gomorrah. What was going on in Gomorrah?
Yeah, I kind of think it's like Minneapolis and St. Paul. They're just twin
cities. You think they're twin cities?
Yeah, they had to be.
It's possible. Yeah. It's possible. So God is doing his thing. He's raining fire and sulfur on Sodom.
But it's not genocide.
Right. It's not genocide because it's only right. It's right. But Lot's wife, this is the part I don't understand. Lot's wife looks back and becomes a pillar of salt. Mm-hmm. What would call why?
Well, she was warned not to. They were warned not to look back.
Okay, why?
Why can't you eat the fruit? I don't know.
Is it like just God doesn't want people to look at him murdering and killing?
Like the Blair Witch Project, he made the kids stare into the corner because he didn't want the eyes on him when he murdered the other kids.
Yeah, it's right. Like he wants the fetishes no one's watching. Or maybe it's kind of like if I do something terrible but no one knows and I'm the only one that knows.
Is it possible because they're aware of the covenant he had with Noah that I wasn't going to wipe people out again, and he's kind of going back on that to a small degree? He doesn't want them to be witness.
I mean, there's got to be a certain,
yeah,
there's a level of shame, right? Maybe. He's ashamed of what he's doing. I mean, it's a
weird test. That's a weird test. Don't turn around.
I'm sure biblical scholars would be able to explain to us exactly why. So she turns into a pillar of salt. And of all the things that we've discussed, I think we're going to get to the craziest part now.
After Abraham goes and looks at the city's burning, he's like, damn. I'm pretty sure that's in there.
Yeah, so I guess Abraham was probably like, I guess God didn't find 10 worthy men in this town. So that gets us to the last part of Genesis 19.
And I'll let you get into the last part. Let me say the second to last part.
Sure.
So Lot and his family go to this place, and he feels unsafe.
Yeah.
So he says, you know what? I'm going to move me and my daughters to some fucking cave. Just hole up in a cave.
Yeah, why doesn't he? First of all, this is the city that he negotiated to go to.
Yeah.
Right. But he didn't feel safe in this new city.
Oh, maybe it was like Han Solo going to Bespin because he thought his boy Lando was there, and Lando already made a deal with the Empire, so there was no
Is Bespin the Sky City?
Yeah, the one.
Man, you go deep. That's Psy Snoodle.
Whatever. So yeah. So
you think he went? It's possible because remember during those wars when Lot was captured, eventually he was freed, but maybe while he was captured, he made some enemies, maybe these towns that he's afraid to go to, maybe, some of his captors might be there or...
Listen, I'm just going to tell him this. He should have just stuck it out because what's about to happen to him.
Okay. So he's afraid. So he goes to live in a cave. Yep. With his daughters, his virgin daughters, who, by the way...
We're assuming they're still virgins.
Fair, yes. We don't know how much time he spent, in the city before he was afraid, and moved into a cave. So the daughters that he was willing to throw to the mob to be raped, he's living with them in a cave now. And, Scott, please, tell us what winds up happening.
Okay, so now the two daughters... I guess they don't have a date on Saturday night. Or maybe I don't know how far.
Well, they're living in a literal cave. You know the expression, "I'm living in a cave."
But I gotta tell you, man, that's a step up from the fucking tents they've been living in. Because we forgot to mention, all up to this point, everybody was living in a tent. I mean, Abraham and Lot were living. But
for some reason, I'm imagining this cave it's not just like a cave on level ground. I'm imagining a rocky
up a mountain
because it's for protection. So there's probably a cave that they have to climb. So it's not easy for them. It's kind of like living on the outskirts of Queens where the subway doesn't travel to, you know what I mean? So you're just stuck there. If you want to go, you're close to the city, but
not
to
the rich
get
to
the city,
right?
To get to the city, it's a hassle. So these women are living with their dad in a cave. They are now of a sexual age, and
so they're completely isolated. We're going to assume, right?
Yes.
So they say. I think they're drinking. Maybe they're not, but one of them, the firstborn says to the secondborn, it goes, we're not getting any. There's no man on earth that's going to hit this.
So I don't remember exactly what the conversation was like. I know that one of them gets Lot drunk.
No. She says to the other
She
one,
says at
let's
first,
get lot drunk.
Okay,
and
so she makes a plan.
Let's get daddy drunk.
They get him really drunk, and he passes out.
Yeah.
And then
Well, maybe he passes out.
I'm pretty sure he passed out.
Okay.
I think he passes out, and then because the men always, it's always justified why, so whoever wrote the Bible is making amends for the man. He's like, it wasn't his fault.
Right.
It was her fault.
Yeah. It's the woman's fault.
Yeah. So she rapes him while he's sleeping.
Yeah.
Incestuous rape. Then the next night, the same thing happens where they get him drunk, and the second sister does the same thing. She incestuously rapes him.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that they're both, lo and behold, pregnant.
Yeah, they get knocked
they conceive. And that is what leads to what's the title of that particular section? It's called The Shameful Origin of Moab and Ammon. So apparently the children that they give birth to will eventually move away, and the names of the two towns, I looked it up. I did my research. These are places in Jordan. So they're going to move eventually to Jordan.
He sets up the Moabites, and his name was Ben-Ami, but he forms the Ammonites.
Yeah.
But his name was not.
I know.
That was weird.
Maybe I should start paying attention more to those kinds of details.
No, maybe you shouldn't.
But everything is so fantastical so far.
Just along the lines of the entire town comes to rape these dudes. I can understand one daughter being crazy, saying, we should still get that drunk and have them knock us up.
Right.
The other daughter had to go along with this.
Right.
That's a better idea than let's just skip out when he goes to get him drunk and go out and party.
Right.
Why not do that? I mean, maybe it's a day's journey. I don't know.
Well, you got to figure there might not be a moral code yet. Has God told anyone not to sleep with their siblings or family yet?
Dude, I'm going to say... No, I haven't seen that written yet, but I'm going to assume he wasn't down with it because he's isolated in the cave by himself, too. So he's probably getting pretty lonely. Right. And he didn't come up with the idea to bang his daughters.
Right.
So maybe that's just something you wouldn't do. And why get daddy drunk to do it? And she does say no man on the face of the earth would could they be horrific looking or? But you know what? That doesn't mean anything. Doesn't matter how ugly.
I think to some extent, God hasn't been shown to be all powerful and all knowing.
Right.
But it's very possible that this is exactly what his plan is, because he tells Abram, right, when he's still Abram, leave Turkey, or whatever the name of the place was then, and go to Canaan, right? He sends him there. There's famine. Abram has to go to Egypt. Then there's all that stuff in Egypt. Abram gets kicked out. He goes back to Canaan, right? And then as all this is happening, Abram's people are splintering off, right? They're going into different directions. And then eventually, as a result of all this, Abram is going to knock up Hagar, who's going to give birth to Ishmael.
Just a recap for the episode.
So what I'm saying is, this is God's master plan. So God knew ahead of time. So when you're asking about these two women who raped their dad, it's very possible that when God sent Abram out of Turkey to go and start an empire or whatever in Canaan, he knew that years down the road, Lot's daughters would rape him, and then that their sons would spread out. No, you don't think so?
No, not at all. No. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, I'm not following Occam's razor there.
Not feeling it at all.
See, this time I'm being the God apologist.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your open mind that you've developed all of a sudden in episode 4. I think that sums up what we're going to do tonight, right?
It was a very dense,
we covered a lot of ground
and shocking amount of just craziness that occurred in 12 through 19.
Yeah. So, what are we looking forward to next time? Do we know?
I don't even know yet. I'm going to have to read ahead a little bit to see, so Genesis, we're going to start with Genesis 20. I know that Abraham goes up to 50. I don't know at what point Abraham dies.
This is quite the arc.
I think Isaac is going to become fairly prominent. More Abraham and Isaac in the next episode.
All right, sounds
All
good.
right.
And listen, to our listeners, if you want to get in touch with us, we can be reached at pod, that's P-O-D, at libelthebible.com. That's pod at libelthebible.com. And I think that's it, right?
And see you next time.
Peace.
Peace out.